Hi everyone. A really warm welcome to the Campaigning with Elected Representatives session. I am Ryan Stalley and I work in the Policy and Campaigns team at Target Ovarian Cancer. Also in this session is Rachel Downing, who is Target Ovarian Cancer's Head of Policy and Campaigns, who you saw in the previous session. Both Rachel and I will be helping facilitate the discussion that we're going to be having a little bit later and helping answer any questions. But before we begin, I'd like to take a couple of minutes to run through some practicalities and housekeeping. So this session is taking place as a Zoom meeting. So this means that you have the opportunity to turn on your camera, which you can do at the bottom of your video screen. Please also be aware that we are recording the session so that we can share this video with those who couldn't attend and so that some of you can watch it back if you need to. Whilst we do our best to remove personal information from the recordings, as this is an interactive session, it may not be possible. So if you would prefer not to appear in the recording, please keep your camera off. If you would like to comment on the discussion, you can use the session chat function on the Feedloop platform, which is the box on the far right-hand side of the screen. I can't see this chat, however, my colleague is going to keep me updated with what you're all saying and your questions and the comments that you're putting in there. And please also remember that it's not possible to delete comments once you've left them. If you'd like to speak, you can also unmute your microphone using the icon located at the bottom of your Zoom screen. And whilst other people are speaking, please make sure that you are muted just to avoid any feedback. So we are talking about campaigning in this session, but I'd like to ask you to remember that if people share their personal story, that everyone here has different circumstances and situations. So things you hear might be relevant to you or your loved one, but they may not. Likewise, everyone is at different stages and coping differently. So please keep this in mind and respect everyone's views and concerns. If you're taking part as a friend or family member, we ask that you don't ask questions based on your loved one's specific circumstances without their knowledge or permission. And if at any point you need to take a break, then please do. As I mentioned earlier, a recording of the session will be available afterwards, so you can always rewatch and catch up on anything you miss. We can't offer any medical advice in the session, but as you've heard throughout the day, our support line number is available in the conference chat. If anything comes up today that you'd like to speak to one of our specialist nurse advisors about. And so without further ado, let's get started. So in today's session, we hope you'll leave bursting with ideas of activities that you can take part in to transform the future of ovarian cancer diagnosis, treatment and care. You'll also hear from Sharon Hodgson, who is Member of Parliament for Washington and Sunderland West and Chair of the All-Party Parliamentary Group on Ovarian Cancer, who will share her advice on how to get your voice heard by your elected representatives. I'll also be giving a whistle-stop tour of our newly updated campaigning toolkit, which contains everything you need to campaign with us. And there will also be an opportunity for us to discuss, also as I mentioned previously, at the end of the session, some of the different types of campaigning activities that you might like to get involved in and how we in the Policy and Campaigns team can best help you to create change. So first up, we'll hear from Sharon Hodgson. So I sat down with Sharon to talk about her work campaigning on behalf of everyone affected by ovarian cancer in Parliament and her advice for campaigners wanting to bring about change. So if you just bear with me, I will get that Q&A session up. Today, I'm thrilled to be joined by Sharon Hodgson, who is Member of Parliament for Washington and Sunderland West and Chair of the All-Party Parliamentary Group on Ovarian Cancer. Sharon, thank you so much for joining me today.
You're welcome, Ryan. Great to be here.
Thank you so much. So you've kindly offered to answer a few questions for our Campaigning with Elected Representatives session at Moving Forwards Together, which is Target Ovarian Cancer's digital conference. So we're going to get onto those in a second, but firstly, I thought we could start by hearing a little bit more about why you're so passionate about improving the lives of women with ovarian cancer, and also your work as chair of the APPG.
So when I first became an MP, one of the first, the first health question I did was in health questions, and it was on breast cancer. And that led to me joining the all-party group for breast cancer. So I became very aware early on in my political career the importance of all-party group working, and then the various charity representatives got in touch, and we from ovarian cancer, and we started talking about the possibility of setting up an all-party group for ovarian cancer. And in the early days this was resisted because the chair of the all-party cancer group felt there was already enough sort of individual cancer groups, and he wanted the more to be under the main umbrella, rather than sort of all off on the individual cancer. So we gave that a go for a while and realized it was still really hard to get that cut through on ovarian cancer because there's so many cancers, sadly. So eventually I agreed, and then I set up the all-party group for ovarian cancer in the end of my first term or the beginning of my second term. So that would be around 2009-10 sort of time.
Thank you so much, Sharon. And obviously, yeah, it's just the APPG has been phenomenal, as you say, highlighting the awareness raising campaign. You know, so many amazing things have happened over the years, from the inquiry to the Westminster Hall debate. And it's also a real opportunity, I guess, to bring parliamentarians and women with ovarian cancer together in order to kind of hear those stories on both sides too. So yeah, absolutely phenomenal work. So thank you. So moving on to the question specifically on campaigning. So if a constituent is campaigning on a particular issue like ovarian cancer, what are the best ways for them to get into contact with you as an MP, so they can speak with you to ask for your help or for your support?
So obviously the easiest way now with all the technology we have at our disposal is to email. That's the quickest way. Some people still like to write, and we still do get old-fashioned mail in envelopes, but usually it is a letter. If somebody phones, they'll not usually get to speak to me. It'll be one of my brilliant staff who will normally then ask people to put it in an email so that I can see it. So honestly, email. I wouldn't suggest social media. A lot of people might feel tweeting or Facebook to their MP is a good way, but most of us do not conduct casework, especially of such a personal nature, over Facebook or social media, Twitter, etc. So email your MP, tell your story, keep it short. Obviously people might think, oh, email their MP, so they've got to include like reports and really long explanations and go into great detail. Just sometimes a couple of paragraphs can be the most powerful thing that you've ever said if it's like from the person, from the heart. And they don't need to send me all the research and stuff around this. That's what you guys at Target are there for, and that's what my staff are there for.
And so, say for instance a constituent did come to you with an email and something that you wanted to work with them on, what action can you take as an MP to make sure that they get their voices heard, I guess in Parliament, but also by decision makers in government?
So there's lots of mechanisms. Obviously, if someone came to me on an issue and I really wanted to take up that issue, I would try and write to the minister. That's always one port of call, write to the minister about that. If I was aware there was an all-party group or they'd ask me to join the all-party group, I would always be happy to do that. Then the next stage is to raise a question on the floor of the House with the relevant minister. After all of the above, sometimes you can raise a general question about the backlog in cancer services, about the problem at a particular hospital, about the lack of radiographers, about the lack of awareness of GPs' knowledge with regard to spotting the symptoms. So you can do that. You can raise it in a debate, and you can find all sorts of mechanisms. I raised in the Queen's speech the cancer backlog. that there wasn't anything in the Queen's speech to address the cancer backlog, which, as you know, is 40,000. They reckon there's 40,000 people who haven't come forward with it to be diagnosed with cancer. When you look at the numbers that we would normally have been diagnosed to now, and there's also already a huge waiting list for cancer treatments. So when all of those people eventually come forward, sadly it might be now later rather than sooner, and they are also going to be requiring treatment. So that treatment waiting list is going to get even longer. You know, there's lots of other ways that you can get involved. Getting involved with the all-party group, when anybody writes to their MP, I would always encourage them to ask their MP to join the all-party group. It's very active. We then can meet together as a group of MPs, meet with specialists and other stakeholders and campaigners, and really hone our message and make sure that we're, you know, all pushing for the same thing, that we're not all sort of being, you know, dispersed and all not fighting together. It's much better to be together and all push for one agreed target. And also, you never know what that MP might go on to do in their career. And I say this because Steve Bryan was in one of my vice chairs when I set up the all-party group. Steve Bryan, the MP for Winchester, and you know, got on really well with him. He was one of the vice chairs. He was one of my co-chair. I was co-chair for the breast cancer group, and he was a co-chair. So we both concentrated on cancer, women's cancers, as a real interest of ours. Then, lo and behold, because the Conservatives are in government, next thing I know, he's public health minister with a responsibility for cancer services. So, you know, obviously that relationship was already there. We already knew. Everyone in the cancer community, especially breast and ovarian cancer, knew we were pushing it an open door with Steve, so we could always get in to meet with him. We always knew that he knew the issues, you know, as well, sometimes if not better than maybe some of his officials or people in his department. So that was really, really useful. So yeah, that it just really, I'm a massive proponent of all-party group work. It's so important, I think, because no one party is ever always going to be in government, as much as, you know, the Tories would probably like that, we would like that, but also building up a specialism on a subject is really important to then you know, campaign and take that forward. So I think if there was one thing, if I was telling your campaigners to do, it would be to write to the MP, tell their story, and ask the MP to join the all-party group.
Yeah. Oh, that's fantastic, because we know how important it is when campaigners do write to their MP or elected representative to have those actions there for their MPs and elected representatives to take forward. So that's really useful advice and guidance. So this is kind of related. So in terms of other actions that you would suggest campaigners to take, like to get the attention of their MP, is there anything else you would suggest? Because I'm thinking of, as part of our campaigning toolkit, we have a section in there which is called Write to Your Local Paper. And one of our campaigners recently sent a press release along speaking about the need to raise awareness of the symptoms of ovarian cancer in order to try and get their MP's attention, because we know that MPs do read local newspapers and that kind of thing. So anything like that you think might be useful for campaigners to think, that might be something that I can do in addition.
Yeah, exactly. Writing to your local paper and sharing your story not only can bring it to the attention of your MP, but also you're doing the job of that awareness raising. You know, if you talk about those 5 symptoms, about the regularity of those, you know, anyone who reads it, and again, this isn't just for women to become more aware. It's very important that men are also aware of the signs and the symptoms, so that they can say, you know, maybe you should go and mention this to the GP. Maybe I read this article, this one was telling that story in the local paper, and, you know, they thought it was this, you know, IBS or this, that and the other, and it turns out it was ovarian cancer. So, you know, that can be so powerful. Again, just sort of, you know, for people who are active on social media, again, sharing their story there on Twitter or Facebook to get the message out there, especially people who've you know, been through it and have got their story to tell. It is so powerful. There's nothing more powerful than hearing someone's story. And we all want that story to have a happy ending. Sometimes it does, you know, for a short period of time. Maybe people have lived longer than they would have done. Sometimes people go on, you know, and live, you know, long and die of their, you know, in old age. But people do like to read about these things, and it just gets that awareness out there. We don't want anyone being diagnosed in A&E anymore because they're in acute pain. You know, we want this to be, you know, something that they pick up and take to their GP, or, you know, that their GP goes, oh, maybe you know, I think I'll just get you, don't worry, but I think I'll just get you tested, you know, to see if it could be ovarian cancer. That's what we want at the earliest stages as possible.
So the final question I had for you, which is, why are campaigners like Target Ovarian Cancer campaigners so vital in bringing about change?
I mean, it sort of follows on nicely from the last question about sort of ensuring that awareness raising, people are aware of the symptoms and get themselves, you know, to get diagnosed sooner so that lives can be saved. And I think, you know, because of campaigners and charities such as Target, we do know lives will have been saved, lives will have been prolonged. For this ovarian cancer, there's far much more awareness now because of Target than there would have been, but also by, you know, bringing forward the experts and the expertise to then call on government to, you know, for new practices, such as one of the ones was having the blood tests and the ultrasounds done at the same time. That was definitely something Target brought forward to campaign for, and, you know, to have the diagnosis also within 28 days to ensure that, you know, that pathway is timely. You know, pushing those things forward with the government really makes that difference and changes lives. And as I've already mentioned, the backlog of 40,000, you know, bringing that front and centre and making sure that the post-pandemic, the government's priorities are in the right place, because we've got to clear that backlog as soon as possible. And also, one of the other things Target has been really great on campaigning around is the postcode lottery. And that isn't just within England, but it's across the nations, the 4 nations of the UK. We've had some amazing meetings in Parliament with representatives from the 4 nations, and people often think, you know, everyone always mourns as a postcode lottery, but when you see how stark the facts can be with regard to that, it really does, you know, it really is a sobering thing to realise. And that's why it's so important that we, you know, bring that to the government's attention and push them to ensure there's fairness in the system for everyone, no matter where you live. And you know, if I was summing up sort of Target Ovarian Cancer's impact on all of this, I would say, you know, it really has changed lives and saved lives for women, you know, with ovarian cancer. And yeah, all power to you, and long may you continue.
Well, there was so much useful information in there, from guidance on how to make an email to an elected representative powerful and compelling, to information on what your elected representative can do on your behalf to ensure that your voice is heard. I also wanted to pick up on the last thing that Sharon said, which was that the work of Target Ovarian Cancer campaigners has changed and saved lives. And this is absolutely true. And it highlights just how important campaigning is, and how the actions of you, Target Ovarian Cancer campaigners, those actions will be transformative to the future for everyone affected by ovarian cancer. So now that we've heard from Sharon, who has given her advice and guidance on campaigning, I know we've had a few questions and comments come through in the chat, but what we'll do is we'll address those in the group discussion section, if that's okay. I wanted to now run through the campaigning toolkit, which is an online resource that's available on our website and has everything you need either to start campaigning with us or to take your campaigning to the next level. So it focuses on some of the things that Sharon mentioned, including how to email your elected representative, how to write to your local paper, but lots of other different activities too. So campaigning on ovarian cancer across the UK. So we know that because healthcare is devolved, the issues that women with ovarian cancer can experience in the different nations can sometimes vary. And this also means that our policy priorities and the asks that we have for elected representatives change too. So we wanted to make sure that you have all the information you need in there about the different circumstances in England, Scotland, Northern Ireland and Wales, and also so that you're equipped with everything you need to have those conversations with your Member of Parliament, your members of the Scottish Parliament, your members of the Senate, or your members of the Legislative Assembly in Northern Ireland. So emailing your elected representative, Sharon mentioned that one of the key ways to contact elected representatives is by doing this. And as Sharon also mentioned, it's so important to make sure that it's kept short and concise and that it's as personal as possible. And obviously we would say that, you know, share as much of your personal story as you want to with your elected representative. But what we have in that section is a template email. So this is as easy as possible and you can edit that email too. So you can include some additional information in there as well. Another good way is to get in touch with your elected representative and to campaign with them is to meet with them as well. So most elected representatives, whether they're MPs, MSPs, MLAs or members of the Senate, hold surgeries, can also set up meetings with their constituents via phone or via Zoom. And we said that this is a really another great way to kind of share your story with your elected representative and highlight to them the calls to action that we have. And in the toolkit, there is a step-by-step guide on how to prepare for a session, how to get the very best out of the session and how to follow up as well. And I would say our email is at the bottom of the slide there, and we're very happy to chat through with you any of these things in the toolkit, but also if you're planning a meeting with your elected representative, how to go about doing that. So we've spoken a lot today about the importance of raising awareness of ovarian cancer and the symptoms of ovarian cancer. So the toolkit provides ideas on how you could do this either via social media, or if you don't really use social media, how you can do this within your community. There's a link in the toolkit that will direct you to the page which you can order awareness raising materials, and they can be taken to your GP surgery maybe, or local pharmacies or local businesses, that type of thing. So there's all the information you need in there to do that. Sharon specifically mentioned about the importance of local papers in not only raising awareness of ovarian cancer, but also getting the attention of your elected representatives. So in this section of the toolkit, there is a template press release, which again is pretty much ready to go, that you can send along to local papers in your area. And we've had some campaigners do that and have some really fantastic local coverage in print and online as well. So we've recently added some brand new sections to the toolkit as well, which is very exciting. So there is a section about influencing your local clinical commissioning group, or CCG. So as you may have heard in the early diagnosis session earlier today, CCGs are the people who decide what health services are needed in a local area. And this means that they are key to improving early diagnosis of ovarian cancer and improving diagnostic pathways. So this section includes a template email which you can send directly to your CCG, asking them to partner with us so that we can work with them to develop and test systems to improve early diagnosis. And it also includes some advice in there on some other ways to influence them. So sometimes CCGs host local events for local residents, which you can go along to share your views and concerns. There's also a section on Craftivism now. And for those of you who haven't heard of Craftivism before, it's a really powerful and creative way to bring about change and raise awareness. And it can involve creating things such as flyers, stickers, badges, cakes, biscuits, bags, to draw attention to a particular issue or campaign. So the toolkit contains lots of tips and ideas, as well as a wonderful case study of Julia, who creates beautiful bags to raise awareness of ovarian cancer and to get the attention of decision makers. And there on the screen is a picture of Julia with her bags, and also her MP, Sarah Owen, who bought one of the bags as well. So it just shows how impactful that type of tactic and activity can be. Now, to achieve the transformational change that we want to see, we need a strong, people-powered movement made up of campaigners right across the UK. And this means getting as many people as possible to become target ovarian campaigners so we can really bring about that change. To help with this, we've included a new section called Grow Our Movement, with all of the things that you can do to help bring other people on board. One of these things is by encouraging people to add their name to our digital pledge, which you've heard about quite a lot today and has been posted in the chat. And I know so many of you have already added your name as well. I think one of the most important things about campaigning is spreading the word and getting other people involved. So if you can share as widely as possible on social media, on Twitter, Facebook, WhatsApp, to really get the message out there and to get as many people adding their name as possible. And there's lots of other guidance on there too, up to other things that you can do to bring other people on board with your campaigning. And I believe that Jess is going to drop another link to the pledge and also to the campaigning toolkit as well, which you can take a look at after the session. So as I said previously, if you've got any questions or would like to discuss a particular activity or to talk through your ideas with us, you can get in contact with us directly at campaigns@targetovariancancer.org.uk. So now if we could bring back up Rachel, that would be fabulous. And we're going to move on to the more interactive part of the session, which involves a group discussion on 2 questions which should be appearing on your screen now. So firstly, we would love to hear from you after hearing from Sharon and about the campaigning toolkit, what activities you're particularly interested in, or you might be up for taking part in, or that particularly excite you. And also what might be the barriers for you in taking part in particular activities or campaigning generally, and how we in the policy and campaigns team might be able to support you to address these barriers. So when we say things such as barriers, I guess thinking about time constraints maybe, or you might feel as if you lack knowledge of certain political processes or campaigning. Is there anything that you think that we could do to help you with that? So we are slightly limited on, we've got just over 15 minutes, which is wonderful. And apologies if I have to cut the conversation short so that we can move into the final session towards the end of the day. But now I'd like to hand over to you. Feel free to either unmute yourself or to drop your comments in the chat, and we can get going.
Right, shall I start us off with something that's come up in the chat from a few people, which is what can you do if your MP has been difficult to engage with, or you've really struggled to get them to engage with you, or they don't seem particularly interested? So maybe what other kind of campaign activities could we offer?
Yeah, this is a really fantastic question. I think the reason that we have so many different activities in the campaigning toolkit is in some ways there to address this problem. There's lots of campaigning can involve lots of different tactics. It can also take a lot of time and persistence as well in order to get your MP's attention. So for example, we had a campaigner, Catherine Hunt, who I believe is with us today, who found it particularly tricky to engage with her MP. I know that she had emailed a few times and found that really challenging. We had a conversation and we wrote an email together, which included some of the things that Sharon mentioned around a personal story, including aspects of Catherine's personal story, making it short and concise. And her MP came back and wrote a handwritten letter, which was phenomenal. There's also the opportunity, as I said, to meet with your elected representative. So sometimes MPs are slightly more receptive, and elected representatives too are slightly more receptive if they are speaking to a campaigner directly or on Zoom or on Facebook. And the other thing that I would advise is doing some campaigning, like raising awareness in your constituency and drawing your elected representative's attention to that. So in short, it's about trying lots of different tactics, and sometimes it can seem as if you're not getting anywhere. But I think, as I said, that is the name of the game when it comes to campaigning, is trying lots of different things and seeing what works, because it can work really successfully in the end. Rachel, I don't know whether you had anything to add to that.
I think you've covered most things. I think the only other thing I would say is campaigning with elected representatives is what the session's about and a lot of what we do, but there is lots of other campaigning. So particularly, so someone in the chat has mentioned CCGs becoming integrated care services, so ICSs. And so that sort of local healthcare delivery, there are definitely avenues and ways of influencing the delivery with almost circumventing an MP in those circumstances, if you like. And although things like writing to your local paper and craftivism can be useful for your elected representatives, there are also those opportunities to raise awareness and get the word out and campaign in your local area. So I'd also really recommend looking at the things in the toolkit around how you can campaign by sharing awareness and how you could get involved in things like Ovarian Cancer Awareness Month.
Fantastic.
So Ryan, we've got another question that's just come in. That if you were going to, so Catherine has just asked, if we're going to write to our local MP with our personal story, what is it we're hoping to achieve from it?
So I think the elected representatives get lots of emails from lots of different avenues. And I think when sharing your personal story, I think it really highlights to them just how important it is that they take action on ovarian cancer, whether that be awareness, diagnosis or treatment. I think that it also helps it to stand out because of the level of emails that and contact that elected representatives have as well. You know, if they've got a really powerful, compelling personal story from one of their constituents who they are there to represent, it is much more likely that they are to then say, right, this is absolutely something that I want to follow up.
And I think just related to that, we've had a question from Yvonne that says, I would want to campaign, but not sure what the aim or demand is. Is it more funding for research, equal access treatments, less delays after diagnosis, raising awareness is always important. If I meet my MP, I need to be asking them something, otherwise how can I keep at them till it's been achieved? So before you get into the answer for that one, Ryan, I would say to Yvonne, never else on the call, please have a look at the campaigns toolkit. There is, I think, so much we want to achieve, as I outlined in the presentation a bit earlier. So sometimes it's helpful to focus on one issue, and that can either be something you're personally very passionate about, because that sometimes works better, but equally you can get in contact with us and we can help advise you if we know that your MP might be particularly interested in things. We do track how MPs have interacted with us. But so Ryan, what would you say is the best way of people finding out what we're campaigning for and what actions MPs need to take?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is where I would direct people to the campaigning on ovarian cancer across the UK. As I said, there is lots of different areas that we do focus on. So there's some ideas in there as well. But in the email to your your elected representative section in the template email, we have a specific asking there at the moment, which is around awareness campaigns. So as Rachel mentioned in the previous session, we want to make sure that NHS England provides continued investment for the awareness campaign that we saw in November of 2020. And we also want to see awareness campaigns across all 4 nations. So that includes Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland too. So as Rachel said, we are more than happy to kind of speak about other actions that it might be worth putting to your elected representative based on our campaigning priorities. As Sharon mentioned in the toolkit as well, one action that's always a really good one is quite, I guess, something that the MPs and elected representatives can do as well is asking MPs to join the all-party parliamentary group on ovarian cancer if they live in England, or the devolved administrations have similar cancer groups which elected representatives get involved. That's a really good step to bring them into the fold and start them hearing more about certain issues around ovarian cancer awareness, treatment, diagnosis, support, that kind of thing.
Just had a really great comment from Catherine in the chat about how to engage your MP. It says, my MP appears to have self-interest, so I thought the more he might know about health might help his career. So picking the right angle for your particular MP is important. I think that's such a great point, Catherine. I think thinking about what might appeal and what you can find out about your MP, and equally coming to have a chat with us, and we can help you work out if there's a specific angle that might work. Anne-Marie has asked a really interesting question. Can raising issues with the CQC help put more pressure on non-responsive CCGs and MPs?
Rachel, I'm going to defer that one to you, I think.
I expect you would.
The expert on the CQC.
I am no expert on the CQC, but I think the short answer to that one, Anne-Marie, is it depends. So the CQC do regular investigations. So I think it's when investigations are ongoing, and it's particularly relevant sometimes in primary care. So if we know there's been issues with particular either areas or GP conglomerates, the CQC can be quite a useful tool. I think it's something we'll need to sort of think about, probably go away and have a think about a little bit more detail around how they'll relate to CCGs, and particularly CCGs are now, it's a very flux moment in time in the provision of healthcare. So there's a new bill going through Parliament which will establish integrated care systems, which will take over from CCGs, which is going to be really helpful in some ways, because it will hopefully mean that that bridge, which you may have heard us talk about in other sessions, between primary and secondary care, we can start to bridge that, and they can start having better conversations with them. So yeah, I think it's certainly one for us to go away and have a think about.
Hi, could I say something?
Absolutely can.
Okay, so if you're on treatment and you've got ovarian cancer and you want to campaign, it's going to cost you. So I think the other way of coming at it is, what is your issue? Everyone's got a story, and we've probably got one thing about our story that we could just speak eloquently and fluently, and it wouldn't cost us. It would be doable. And that's the bit I think you could really help us with, identifying which is the bit in our story that we could really make a difference on.
Oh, Ryan, you're muted.
Yeah, absolutely, Julia. Thank you so much for that. And you know, that's what we're here for. That's what we're here for. And I think that that's the value of also having direct conversations with us too. Oh, sorry, can you hear me now? Yes, good. That's the value of having those direct conversations too. So please do get in touch with us as well, and we can really have a and again, however much you're comfortable in sharing with us, we can have a conversation about that and really highlight those aspects that will be really important to take forward to your elected representatives, and you can also highlight in the different types of activities that you want to take part in, that you want to do. Julia, I wondered if you would mind just sharing a little bit about your project as well, because you feature in the campaigning toolkit Craftivism section. So it would be great to share with the group a little bit about the history of that, how it came about, and what you're up to at the moment and the impact it's had.
Okay, so my involvement in Craftivism started August 2019. It was when Boris prorogued Parliament, and I just thought, oh, I'm on chemo, but that's a step too far. So I went down to outside the House of the Parliament to shout, and there was a group of young women there, all dressed as Offred out of The Handmaid's Tale. And they didn't shout, and they were quiet and dignified, but their get up with the bonnet and their big cloaks and the red dress just spoke. You have taken our voice away if you shut Parliament. And I thought, how clever to use a cultural icon. So I came back and I thought, well, who's my cultural icon? And I thought, well, Frida Kahlo, because she used her art to look at her miscarriages and all of that sort of stuff. And then I really got hold, I thought your MP was good, Sandra Hodgson, about keep it really, really simple and very direct. So my message was ovarian cancer, be informed, early diagnosis increases life chances. I had my first symptoms of ovarian cancer at 55, but it took 3.5 years to get a diagnosis. And so by the time I was getting treatment, you know, it was already on the surface of my liver. So I realized that was the thing I was passionate about. So I started through Instagram distributing the bags, and then I wanted to get out and chat to people. So took the bags to a summer garden party in Luton Park, which is where I met met the MP Sarah Owen. She was just so enamored by it and wanted to know all about ovarian cancer. So She then took the bag to the Houses of Parliament tea room. But what was really good was she put it on her Twitter, her Instagram, and her Facebook. And that then just gave it a legitimacy. So Luton's a brilliant place because it's so culturally diverse. So from that, I then started to get direct messaging from women in the Asian community and particularly the Polish community. And I used Target Ovarian's sheets because you're brilliant. You've got all the early signs and symptoms all in, I don't know, about 18 languages. And so I send that out with the bags, and that's been great. And I continue to make the bags, and that's good for me because I've got something to do.
Thank you so much, Juliet. Yeah, and it's just having a phenomenal impact. And one of the things that I really picked up on when you were speaking as well was the power of imagery. And I think your bags do that really well. And I think that one of the things that I would say as well is that even though we've got the activities in the campaigning toolkit, the sky is the limit, really, in terms of ideas, in terms of how to get elected representatives' attention and how to raise awareness and how to bring about that vital change that we all want to see. So as well as being there to offer advice and guidance, we also know that you'll be bursting with ideas about different things that you could do to do this. And I think that's when campaigning is also at its best, when it's innovative, when it's fun. And that's why we really wanted to highlight your bags, Julia, and also have that craftivism section in there. So we've got just under 5 minutes.
Sorry,
yeah.
Can I just say something?
Of course you can. Go ahead.
Sorry. Hiya. It's just to say that I'm helping Julia. We've got we're going to a Christmas fair in Luton on the 5th of December. So if anybody's in Bedfordshire or Hertfordshire and they want to come along to the Christmas fair on the 5th of December, I'm Julia's elf for the day, and we're going to be raising awareness of the symptoms and selling her bags.
That's amazing. Thank you so much, Catherine. And yeah, well, we can share the information afterwards as well for anyone in the area so that they can pop along and see you both hosting the stall. So that's absolutely wonderful. And yes, I remember you telling me, and I was like, oh, wonderful. There's a team of campaigners getting together to raise awareness and get those bags out there. So that's fantastic. Thank you so much. So yes, just under 5 minutes remaining of the session. I wondered if anyone had any final thoughts to share, particularly on barriers that might stop you from taking part in campaigning, and that anything else that you feel that we in the policy and campaigns can do to help address those.
For me, it's more about I get disheartened about that I feel like I write, I get a response, and that's it. I feel like that's over for my MP. So it's about that momentum and how we can keep that momentum going.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a really great point, Catherine. And I think, as I said before, you know, campaigning can be like that. There can be ups and downs. It takes an awful lot of persistence. It takes an awful lot of trying. It takes an awful lot of motivation. But I would bring it back to that point that we mentioned about growing our movement. And I think we are more likely to bring about change when all of us come together to demand that change, because our voice is stronger when we work together. But also that means that when we have a movement, we're able to motivate each other, and we're able to keep each other inspired. We're able to keep each other on that track and keeping the objective that we have and the mission that we have at the forefront of our minds so that we can keep going and we can keep pushing. So if you ever feel disheartened or you feel like you're not getting anywhere, absolutely stick at it, because change will happen. It can sometimes just take a little bit of time and all of us working together in order for that to happen. So I'd like to wrap up there. So we've reached the end of the session. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. We hope you enjoyed it and found it really informative and inspiring. Thank you so much to everybody who contributed today. If you were unable to speak, really apologies for this, but please do remember that you can reach us, the Policy and Campaigns team, via the email on the screen now, which is campaigns@targetovariancancer.org.uk. Thank you so much again for joining us, and I hope you enjoy the final session of the day.